Hey guys, today we are doing the lovely Harley Quinn and she is looking a bit beaten up because you don't go on an ass-kicking adventure without at least getting a few bruises. I'm starting out with a green color corrector because I got bitten by 1,000 bugs over the weekend. That's why I look a little bit sad and swollen. And I'm using a tiny brush just to apply that onto my little red patches. I'm going to be applying a black eye prosthetic later, so I'm making sure I'm not putting any makeup where that prosthetic's going to go because you want to have nice clean skin to stick the prosthetic onto. Then I'm applying a concealer over the top of that color corrector and smudging it out slightly with my finger. I find if you don't smudge it out a little bit, then you can see where you've concealed under your foundation if you use a light coverage foundation like I do. I like to do this a while before I actually apply my foundation so that it has time to set and doesn't just kind of mix in with the foundation. You really want all that correction to stay where you put it. Then I'm taking an orange color corrector and I'm using that for my under eye bags to cancel those out. I'm only doing one eye because the other eye is going to be covered up with this huge black eye prosthetic that is too big for my face, but we're going to work with it anyway. I'm outlining the edge of the prosthetic where it's going to be stuck on with a light eye pencil, and that's going to be our guide for where to put the spirit gum. I'm using spirit gum to attach the prosthetic. And you need to be really careful using spirit gum around your eyes. There are warnings on the bottle that say, do not use this on your eyelids or on the really delicate skin around your eyes. And you also want to avoid getting it in your eyebrow, or that's going to be a bit of a pain to remove later. I'm also adding spirit gum around the edges of the prosthetic. Once the spirit gum's got tacky, I'm applying the prosthetic and I'm starting from the inner corner. You really want to get it in the right place the first time. It's really hard to lift up a prosthetic and move it around once it's on because the edges are so thin that they will rip or they'll flip over and stick to each other, and it just makes a big mess. Then I'm taking some witch hazel to smooth down all those edges so that they blend really nicely with my skin. This is a gelatin prosthetic and witch hazel is great for blending the edges. If you don't have witch hazel, you could use some warm water to do it instead, but it will take a lot longer with warm water. I'm using a cotton bud, rubbing it on the witch hazel stick and then gently going over the edges of the prosthetic in an outward motion. So you want to be going from the edge of the prosthetic out onto the skin, and that's going to smooth everything down. You do need to be quite gentle with this, otherwise the prosthetic can tear. Depending on how well you want to blend it and how good your edges were in the first place, this can be quite time consuming. Once everything's blended, the skin around the prosthetic is probably feeling a bit gross and sticky. So I'm taking a face cleaner, the ones that smell like alcohol and kind of burn a little bit when you put them on. And I'm using that just to clean up any sticky patches. To get rid of any leftover stickiness or stickiness on the prosthetic itself, I'm covering it in a ton of loose face powder and then just brushing off all of the excess. You could use a translucent powder or a talcum powder for this if you want. On to the makeup. So I'm starting out with a pale foundation. This does pretty much match my skin tone. Harley Quinn is very pale, so you could either go with white face paint, which I think sometimes looks a bit too thick and white, or you could just go for a foundation that is lighter than your own shade, and I think that gives a more kind of natural appearance. It can make you look a bit ashy, which for Harley Quinn I don't think is a bad thing, but it is best to stick to your own undertone. The prosthetic is going to be covered in bright comic style black eye bruising, so I'm not too worried about covering it in foundation because we're just going to cover that up anyway. For the bruising, I'm taking a bright pink face paint and a wedge sponge that I've picked lots of holes in the end of, and I'm stippling the face paint over the prosthetic, especially around the edges of it because that's going to help it blend in with the skin even more. And in some random places, because she probably didn't just get punched in the face, she probably had, a full-on fight. So under the lip, on the forehead, places like that. If you don't have face paints, then you could do this with lipsticks or eyeshadows, blushes, whatever you've got in your makeup collection. And of course, you could do these bruises so that they're more true to life colors. I just wanted mine to be super bright and to match Harley's makeup. Then I'm going in with a blue face paint and that same wedge sponge and stippling that on where there is pink. And I am actually looking at reference pictures of black eyes. The best thing to search for is for boxers black eyes to get reference pictures because they have some big shiners. Then I'm using a really nice bright pink eyeshadow and adding that to the fake lash line between the two swollen eyelids. Then I decided that the face paints weren't really bright enough for this look, so I went in with that same pink eyeshadow to enhance the pink face paint and with a bright blue eyeshadow to enhance the blue areas. Where the bruising is more solid, like where you have natural eye bags, I'm using an eyeshadow brush to apply it and then just smudging it out a bit with my finger. And for places where it's not as solid, I'm using a stippling brush. You could also use your picked apart makeup wedge to apply this if you want, but mine was wet and full of face paint, so I didn't want to stick it in my eyeshadows. Things did start to get a bit blocky and muddy, so I took the picked apart makeup wedge and some foundation and just lightly dabbed it over the bruising to break it up a bit. To break it up even more, I took some makeup remover on a cotton pad and just wiped off some areas within the bruising, so there's some patches in there that aren't as heavily bruised because it had all started to look like one big block of colour. For the regular eye, I'm starting out with a white eyeshadow base and applying it all over the lid and then blending out the edges so that we don't end up with a harsh edge. And I'm also using that on the lower lash line as well so that the eyeshadow will be super intense there too. Then I'm taking that same pink eyeshadow and applying it all over the lid. I went with pink because there's quite a lot of blue in the look already, but if you have more pink in the look, then feel free to do this eye as the blue eye. It's up to you. Harley's eye look is quite messy. I went for a cat eye shape and just blended it out a bit around the edges, but you know, you don't need to be too kind of neat and tidy and perfect about doing this because Harley certainly isn't. For the lower lash line, I'm using the same pink and I'm packing it on really heavily so that we've got something to smudge. And you want to smudge about the outer third of the makeup. I'm starting out by using my fingers and just dragging the makeup down and outwards a bit, and then going back in with the eyeshadow brush just to add in some smaller streaks and smudges. There's nothing special going on with the liner. I'm just adding a very thin line along my lashes on the top lid because I'm going to put false lashes on and I hate it when you can see the edge of the lash band on the inner corner, so the liner just hides the lash band. But from the pictures of Harley, it doesn't really look like she's wearing liner or that she has anything too dramatic going on in the liner department. Then I added some fairly natural looking lashes, and I forgot to do this while I was filming. I did it when I was taking the pictures, but I added some lashes to the black eye as well, just inside the slit to make it look a bit more realistic. Then I'm filling in my brows on both sides, and I'm using a charcoal pencil. Even though I have dark hair and dark brows, black would probably be too intense for this look with the blonde wig. I checked out the pictures of Harley and she does have dark brows compared to her hair. So if you have dark brows, then you could go for a grey or a brown or something like that. If you don't have a pencil, you could use an eyeshadow to fill them in or something. And then, because I'm a massive noob, I covered up my face while I was lining my lips. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just using a red liner and lining my lips. Then I'm filling them in with a liquid to matte scarlet lipstick that matches the liner that I've just put on. You probably want to smudge this now before it completely dries. I forgot and had to reapply the lipstick so that I could smudge it. When I did remember to smudge it, I just added some more lipstick and then just dragged it out with my fingers. Then I'm using a black kohl liner to add the heart tattoo to the bottom of the prosthetic, and I did forget to add her other tattoo where it says rotten along her jawline, so yeah, fail, sorry about that guys. For the blood, I'm using a purple liquid lipstick because blue plus pink is purple, but you could use red or real fake blood or mix up some purple fake blood. And I'm not going too heavy with the blood because we're already looking quite colourful. So I'm just having some dripping out of the corner of the mouth and some coming out of the nose. And that's it guys, you are now a very beaten up looking Harley Quinn. I hope you enjoyed this video and you like this look. I have a couple more videos for other members of the Suicide Squad coming up, and you can get a sneak peek at those looks over on my Instagram. And I will see you in the next video. Bye guys!